Born and raised in the small rural town of Goldsboro, North Carolina, it took a quantum leap for Velton Ray Bunch to arrive in Los Angeles to do what he does best, make music. With qualifications ranging from 5 Emmy nominations to working with Dolly Parton to scoring Star Trek Enterprise, Bunch was introduced to Mike Post, who was interested in recording some of his songs. Post recognized the unique talents of Bunch and used his pervasive influence to introduce Velton Ray to TV music, initially as a pianist and arranger for Ray Charles and Mac Davis. Bunch maintained success as a songwriter, evidenced by the renowned artists that would perform his songs, including Dolly Parton, the Commodores, and the Oak Ridge Boys. Velton Ray was soon scoring variety specials, resulting in over 25 critically acclaimed scores and compositions. At the urging of Post, Bunch began to score dramatic TV, first working on Magnum P.I. and Hill Street Blues. Velton Ray then started on Quantum Leap, for which he earned his first Emmy nomination. The show is a showcase of Bunch's versatility, providing a backdrop for his abilities in the genres of symphonic rock, country, rhythm and blues, and of course, gospel. As a result of his hands-on approach and pleasant demeanor, Velton Ray developed a professional kinship with the show's star, Scott Bakula, which led to numerous opportunities for Bunch, including Bakula's Star Trek Enterprise. In addition to his episodic television scoring success, Velton Ray has scored telefilms, including his most recent projects, Flight 93, Three Blind Mice with Brian Dennehy, a Showtime picture, What Girls Learn, and a biopic based on Senator John McCain's book entitled Faith of My Fathers. He won an Emmy for the orchestral score for the Star Trek Enterprise episode Similitude. And now here's Albie with Velton Ray Bunch.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Bunch.
Yes, how are you?
Good, good. This is Albie from the Quantum Leap podcast.
Yeah, how you doing, Albie?
Doing really good. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. For our listeners that don't know what a composer does, could you please explain the process?
Oh, sure. Well, a composer is the person who writes original music for a show. You know, anything from the background music that you don't pay much attention to hopefully the theme of the show at the beginning and all kinds of stuff in between.
I know you've done a lot of television shows, but can you tell us about your work on Quantum Leap?
Yes, I can. Quantum Leap was one of the most interesting projects I've ever worked on throughout my career. For just a host of reasons. Not only was it a wonderful quality, the whole show, the writing, the acting, of course, was superb, and that's rare in television to get all that kind of combination. But the stories were interesting, and from a musical standpoint, it was really interesting to do because, of course, the time period that each show was set in, which was different week to week, which meant that the music generally, we tried to reflect the time periods that, whether it was the 70s or it was during the Kennedy years or, whatever it happened to be. You wanted to interpret that somewhat. So it made for a lot of head scratching and trial and error, but it also made for a really interesting musical experience.
The two names that come up when you're talking about music and Quantum Leap is yours and Mike Post. Could you let the listeners know what parts you did and what parts he did?
Yes. Well, Mike Post was the original composer on the show in terms of it was his show. And I had started working with Mike on other shows and really was just starting in television. And so we did the first few episodes together, and then there were a couple of other composers that did bits and pieces here. And but Don Belisario eventually came to us and kept saying he liked this piece of music, but he didn't care for this one. He liked this one, all through the thing. And as it turned out, unfortunately, a lot of the music that he liked was mine. And so Mike and I were best of friends. And Mike said, this would probably be easier if you just did the whole thing yourself. And so really that's how that happened. And I just took over the show. I don't remember how far into it, a few episodes, and did the rest of the seasons. And so that's how that worked.
Do you have some favorite pieces from Quantum Leap?
Yeah, I do. I have very memorable. And I was suppose that would be tied into the different shows that I remember. It's been a long time, so you'll forgive my failing memory. But the ones that stick out to here all these years later are certainly the Thanksgiving episode. I believe it was Thanksgiving, and there were a couple of pieces of music during the actual Thanksgiving dinner, in which there was no dialogue. It was just a very, let's say, empty except for the music, and I thought it was fabulously effective at the time, and very rare for television that you get that kind of time without dialogue, without special effects, all that kind of stuff that covers up good music, in my opinion. But anyway, that particular episode I remember was great. And from a musical, creative standpoint, for me, probably the highlight of the whole series was the opening show to the last season, the Kennedy assassination show. And forgive me again, I don't remember the names of these or the titles of the episodes, but most of the fans will certainly know which one that was. But that was, up until that time, one of the largest orchestras that had been used in television to score an event. And so we did it with a symphony orchestra that we put together, and it was a very theatrical, bombastic, dramatic score. And it just made for a great experience for me.
The Suite from Lee Harvey Oswald, I really enjoy that on the Quantum Leap album. It's a really good one.
Yeah, well, that's where it came from. We just took the compendium of all the music and put it together. Yeah, I like that too. And it was one of the most challenging things that I ever had to do. Primarily from a standpoint of time constraint. In television, you don't get the luxury of time as you frequently do in features, and so it was really great, and it was it came off great. I just thought I was very proud of it.
Did you do the theme to The Leap Home?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
That's a beautiful piece of music.
Oh, thank you. I like that too. I had forgotten that piece.
You also worked on Star Trek.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I'm a big Trekkie, and you won an Emmy Award for the Season 3 Episode 10, Similitude. What was that like winning the Emmy Award?
Well, it was, everybody always says this, that's been nominated before, but I completely was not expecting to win. I had been nominated a few times before, and it hadn't happened. So I really went into this with expectations of not winning at all. So I really enjoyed the experience. I took my mother as my date that night, and it was just a fabulous night. And I was shocked. That's all I can say. The competition was very keen, and I was shocked. But gosh, what a great night that was.
That's awesome. Can you tell me about your time with Star Trek? What do you do? Next Generation and Enterprise, right?
I did a little bit of Next Generation, but very limited amount on that. I became involved in Enterprise through Scott Bakula. Scott, of course, was a primary actor on that, and I've worked on him with so many projects, beginning with Quantum Leap, and we developed a friendship and a mutual working relationship, respect, and he's just a wonderful guy. Anyway, he's the one who got me involved in Enterprise. And so I rotated that show with two other fellows who had been on those shows forever and ever, and I was the new guy coming in. So it was a great experience.
Was working with Scott on Quantum Leap like an asset to have him be able to play the piano, or?
Well, yes, it was. It was really very much an asset. Scott's a very talented guy, and it's interesting working with someone like him who has musical knowledge, and it makes for a different experience. In other words, I can remember one time specifically when we did the John Lennon song "Imagine," and I had played the piano on the original recording session, and Scott wasn't there. And Scott called me up, and he said, "I think that little melody is not correct." And I said, "God, I'm sure it is." And I went and listened to it, and he was right. The melody was not exactly the way that John Lennon had played it on the piano in the original, Beatle recording. Da 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 da, the little piano riff, and I had to listen to a live version or some other version of it, and it had been played a little different. But Scott caught that, so I had to be on my, P's and Q's for him. But he's great. He's got great ears. He's a good singer, as I think all the fans know. And he really, as far as music is concerned, he doesn't dictate what you should do, but he makes great suggestions, and he has great taste. And so, yeah, it was an asset, very definitely.
Did you write the things for him to play on the piano sometimes?
I would have to generally say no. I'm trying to think now. There were a couple of pieces that I did write that he learned here and there, but I frankly don't remember all those pieces. But he could learn. He could learn anything. I mean, really and truly, if you played it for him a couple of times, he would get it, master it. And if he couldn't get it the first time, you could darn well know that he was going to have it the next time. So, a very hardworking guy.
You did so many different television shows. Ones that stick out when I was reading about you: Magnum PI,
yeah,
Xena.
I never was. That's an interesting thing. I get credit for doing a lot of Xenas, and I never composed a single episode of that show. What they did is they licensed a lot of my music from different shows, different movies, and this kind of stuff, and they licensed it. But I could never take credit for writing that show. I never did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Would it be okay for us to play one of your songs on our show on this interview?
Sure, absolutely.
Do you have one that you would be okay with us playing or like us to play?
Well, the song that most of the fans always want to hear is the one that Scott Bakula and I wrote together, Somewhere in the Night. I think that's on the album, and everyone always loves that song.
On the day I walked away, all the blue rolled into gray. Now in the dark, alone I lay. Should have stopped, but I could never ever stay. Somewhere in the night, inside my dreams you burn so bright, and I'm with you there and everything's alright. Somewhere in the night, before the darkness turns to light, let me love you there, somewhere in the night. Second chances I won't get, wouldn't dare to hope, and yet everywhere I turn I see your silhouette. Been so long, but I never will forget. Somewhere in the night, inside my dreams you burn so bright, and I'm with you there and everything's alright. Somewhere in the night, before the darkness turns to light, let me love you there, somewhere in the night. Time after time I find that I'm thinking about you. Up on the hill I see you still, but I just can't reach. Who would answer your prayers? Who would wait by the stairs? Not me, not me. Somewhere in the night, inside my dreams you burn so bright, and I'm with you there and everything's alright. Somewhere in the night, before the darkness turns to light, let me see
Scott wrote most of the lyrics on that song, and I wrote the music, and then we sat down and put our heads together and finished it off together. I thought it came out quite nicely.
Amazing collaboration between you guys.
Yeah.
It's a song that a lot of our listeners really like. Speaking of the soundtrack to Quantum Leap, was that a good experience putting that all together, and how did that work out?
Oh, it was a fantastic experience. We went, I don't remember how long we took in the studio, but, the hardest part of all, and I have to give credit to Mark Banning on this, the hardest part of all was synthesizing all the music down to an amount that you could put on a CD, because as you can imagine, over 5 years of time, I don't remember how many shows, 100 and something episodes maybe, there was just a mountain of music there. And Mark really did the homework and went through and decided what we should use and what we shouldn't. And then, of course, Scott had the final say. So we had to, really winnow that down to a manageable amount. That was probably the hardest part. And then we had to re-record most of the things in the studio and do, we just redid the whole thing. And so, yes, it was a fabulous experience. I love working with Scott.
During the run of the series, did you have an orchestra at your disposal, or was it mostly synthesizers?
We had I don't remember. The first couple of years, we had an orchestra, and we would do most everything with the orchestra on a week-by-week basis. However, due to the ever-present budget cuts and changes that all shows go through, we had to start backing off from that, and we would use smaller ensembles and then augment it with, synthesizers, samples, that kind of stuff. Frankly, most of Quantum Leap, with the exception of a handful of episodes, were done with some sort of live ensemble. And it just worked much better for that show in terms of, because the show is a period piece. And so most of the time it just didn't sound good if it was synthesizers and samples, that kind of thing. So most of the time we used live musicians.
With all that music that you and other people composed for Quantum Leap, would you be in support of a future release of that music like they've done with Star Trek in the past?
Yes, I would. Yeah. Are you talking about on Quantum Leap?
Yes, on Quantum Leap. Just because it's a shame that it's all sitting there and there's people that want to hear it and they can't.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I don't know. That would be a Mark Banning question, and he's the one who's headed up this project for years and years, and he would have to probably secure, the rights to the music after all of this time, and that would be quite an undertaking. But yeah, I would be in full support of doing that.
When you wrote the music to go along with the episodes of Quantum Leap, did you also have a hand in picking the songs that were from other artists that went in the Quantum Leap?
Yes, I would say had a hand in it. I had suggestions. When songs from outside were used, it frequently would come from the writers, whoever wrote the episode, and would have an idea that they would build scenes around, and then of course it then ultimately would come down to money as to whether they could license the songs or not. For instance, I remember that Imagine was extraordinarily expensive to license at the time, and somehow they were able to pull that off. But those two factored in, and on both, Ari would ask me sometimes if I had an idea of songs and that type of thing. But it was very much a hands, just an additional hand on deck for that.
The reason why I'm asking is I don't know if when you compose the music, if you made it match up with those outside songs so the whole feeling would be like a unified feeling. And also, how do you feel about in the DVD releases them replacing the music? And does it change your vision?
Well, that's a double-barrel question there. Yes, the answer to the first part of the question was I absolutely, when a song was being used that was from an outside song, such as Imagine, I would always consider trying to weave it in and out and weave the score into it so that it was smooth. I know we're trying to, maybe matching keys and matching tempos or whatever it was called for, but I always really like to have it as smooth a transition as possible. And part two of that question, you asked me how I felt about them replacing the music on the DVDs, and I absolutely detest that. I really am adamantly against that, but that's a process that almost all the studios are doing now. And we have very, very little control over that from a composer standpoint, and they do it primarily and only because of money. Yeah. In other words, when shows like Quantum Leap or Magnum or any of those type of shows, when they were originally written, the idea of doing DVD releases really wasn't a realistic possibility at the time. So the music, when they made a deal with me or a contract or with the musicians that were used, that was not a consideration. So many, many years later, when they went back to do DVDs, and that was considered a new use of the music, and they had to relicense it, and that's it can be expensive. You can imagine the cost of a big orchestra repaying everybody again for using that. And so most of the studios, frankly, don't even ask; they just do it, and they do it with synthesizers and stuff. And so I find it appalling. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it.
Hopefully, one day they will do a re-release with the original music.
I would like to see that happen. I really would. And there have been a couple of other shows that I've worked on who, for instance, I did the season of Nash Bridges, the last season that was on with Don Johnson. And CBS approached me about using. They were going to do exactly the same thing, replace all the music with, cheaper synthesized music. And but they came to me, and we were able to work out a deal to salvage the music, which was good, because it was better that the original music was there and how it was intended to be heard. So, but that's very, very rare.
When that happens, do they consult you at all, or do they just bring in an outside team and not really care about the quality as much?
Yes, exactly. They, from what I've seen from the outside, they really don't care a whole lot, though. They have their own guy or two, mostly who remain anonymous, and they sit there and just do stuff to replace music. Yeah, and so as I said, I can't speak very highly of that. I'm really against that process. I'm glad we agree. Yeah, good. Okay.
It's something I wanted to know. When I love music. I have no musical talent whatsoever, but I love it, and especially soundtracks and scores. And I'm wondering, when you're on a show like Quantum Leap or Enterprise, do you watch the dailies and then get an idea of the song you want to write, or do you have songs that you come up with all the time stuck in your head and maybe apply them to certain episodes or certain situations?
No, it doesn't work that way too often. When you're doing a television series, you're guided obviously first and foremost by the picture and what's on the screen, and you need to enhance that picture. But you seldom ever have a a pre-mental picture of music that's going to happen, and then you plug it in somewhere. It almost never happens that way. But for the most part, almost on a series such as Quantum Leap, it goes so fast because they're producing so many episodes that they would give me we would see a rough cut of the show before it was finally edited, but it would give me a very good idea of what the final show was going to be like. So instead of maybe an hour, it might be just put together and be an hour, 45 minutes, or 2 hours long. It's going to be edited and changed, but it gives you a good idea of what that show is going to be like. So then I can go home and formulate themes, formulate ideas, and if I have an unusual stroke of brilliance, I would call Don Belisario and say, hey, I was thinking about doing this or something, and run it by him. But I'll tell you, it's a fast and furious process in television, and you don't have time to really sit and ruminate a whole lot. You just have to do it. And so that's the way it works. You get a rough picture, and you just start in.
In today's age of digital downloads and iTunes and Amazon, what is the best way for your fans, people that want to support you, to buy your music? Is it digital or still like CDs?
Well, in terms of Quantum Leap, it would have to be the CDs. That seems to change as the newer shows go on. Now, most of the newer shows are coming out and making deals with iTunes, making deals, so that they're downloadable. That, of course, was not possible when we first started doing Quantum Leap. So, I don't really know how that would work on a show like Enterprise. I don't think most of that music is available as downloads. I don't know for sure. I haven't looked.
Does a composer get residuals?
Very, very small amounts, yes, but very small amounts. Enough to buy a Starbucks coffee, maybe.
Well, that's quite a bit nowadays, though.
Well, that's true. That's true. It's going up.
I read in your bio that you worked with Ray Charles.
Yeah, sure did, yeah. I worked with Ray when I first moved out to Los Angeles, and I put together a little group called Strut, a singing group, and wrote some songs for them, did some arranging, and one of his people on his record label from Tangerine Records heard the group in a little club here in Los Angeles and approached me, and so they signed us to a contract, and I went out and conducted for Ray for a very brief time. We did some interesting concerts, but I was on the road with him for a very brief time. And the group Strut sang backgrounds. Yeah, that was quite an experience.
And Dolly Parton, too, huh?
Yes, I have quite a long history with Dolly, and she's one of my all-time favorite people and all-time favorite artist. One gifted lady, I'll tell you that.
I agree. Is there any stories you have from working on Quantum Leap that you'd like to share with your fans and our listeners? Something that you are really proud of?
Well, I would think, the most proud moment was at the end of the Kennedy episode in the final season, because that was such a difficult show to do, and it was a huge orchestra, and we had such limited time and to do it, and I thought that we were able to pull that off in an amazing fashion, really. I really did. And that was one of those scores that I felt going in, or coming out of it, I should say, that I thought was certainly Emmy worthy. And, and we didn't win. So, but I thought it was a really, really good score. And so that was my favorite musical memory, I think. But I'll tell you one interesting aside about Quantum Leap, and this that I was speaking to earlier in this interview, was talking about the variety of music every week, how it reflected different time periods. I remember very well in that episode with Kennedy, and we had a massive symphony orchestra over on the NBC lot, and we recorded it, and it was so exciting and bombastic and big. And then the next week, the very next episode was, I don't remember the title, but I only used two musicians. I used a jazz violin player and I think a guitar. I mean, it was just sort of a jazz fiddle sort of score. So to go from, 100 musicians one week to two the next week was pretty interesting.
Like you were saying, the different settings each episode, so it required different things.
Yeah, it did. It did. There was a lot of times I really had to do my homework, because no matter how good a composer you are, there are genres that you just don't know as well and don't do as well as some others. So there were a lot of times when I go, wow, I really got to go do my homework. So
thank you so much for joining us. Very much appreciated that you took the time to talk to us today.
Okay, well, thank you. I've enjoyed talking to you.